wondered why one week you feel open, social, full of energy, and another week you want everyone to leave you alone? Or a week where you feel like you've got this, life, your job, your exercise routine, your well-being, and then suddenly it feels like you don't. You're full of doubt, you have no motivation, and the pattern just feels exhausting. You're thinking like, why am I so rubbish? If this is you, or if you've listened to the first few episodes and thought, okay, Lizzie, all these stories are great, but what is actually happening across the cycle? Then this episode is for you. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of The Period Lesbian, a podcast about periods times 2. I'm Lizzie, your host, and I'm so glad you are listening with me today. This podcast is all about helping lesbians and queer people understand their menstrual cycles, their partner cycle, and how that awareness can deepen connection and understanding with ourselves, first and foremost, and in our relationship, supporting us more deeply over time. So, this past month has been such a clear example of my cycle at play and why this awareness is so supportive. I launched this podcast in my inner summer, so my ovulation phase. I was feeling so confident. I was ready to say to the world, here it is, here I am, let's go. And I felt so comfortable being seen. And then about a week into it, I could just feel the cracks creeping in. This voice telling me, like, it was pretty silly. Like, the whole concept of this podcast is pretty silly. And then, like, what kind of name is that? The Period Lesbian. Like, this part of myself was mortified. You know, maybe no one wants to listen. And what I'm grateful for is the knowledge of my cycle. Because what was happening there is actually like totally a normal experience in the cycle. And because I understood that, I knew how to care for the doubt creeping in. I knew how to respond to my inner critic wanting to have it say. And I knew how to respond to like my waning energy and this shift from feeling invincible to suddenly feeling like quite exposed. You know, I didn't kind of have to make it wrong. I didn't have to let it spiral. I didn't have to let it sabotage things or spill out sideways, like, you know, kind of project anything onto Beth or drop other projects. I could just take care of myself inside of it whilst keeping moving forward. And yeah, this is why cycle awareness is so helpful. So let's talk about what is actually happening across the menstrual cycle, hopefully in a very simple way. I'm not going to go into masses of detail, but really to give you an idea of this pattern. Because once you understand the rhythm of it, the rhythm of your menstrual cycle, everything starts to make so much more sense. I'm not really going to go into anything about the relationship today, like how it shows up in our relationship, because right now I think what feels important is getting a really good understanding of what is happening across the cycle and helping you to really understand your cycle, because it's from that foundational place that you and your partner will then be able to kind of integrate this knowledge into your relationship. So you'll have me mentioned, and you might know this already, you know, we have 4 phases of our menstrual cycle, all with dominant hormones, dominant emotions, and energy. It's kind of they have their own tone. And we're going to start with our period, the bleed, your inner winter. So I call your inner winter. Some people also might call this just phase 1. This is the phase where you're least buffered when it comes to hormones. So your main hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all very low. So there's really nothing buffering you. I often say this is kind of like midnight for those with the male hormonal cycle, but they're in bed tucked up. You're not. You're out in the world doing things. Mentally, things might feel kind of quieter. You might actually find you have a lot of clarity in this part of your cycle, like you can see things more clearly, or there's just like less noise in your head, like your mind is less preoccupied. I find it kind of really peaceful. I think without this knowledge, I used to, and particularly when I worked in corporate, I found it quite jarring because rather than my mind being really busy, it was really spacious. And you just kind of, you might find that you just don't care about all of those details that other times you are very either obsessed with or really focused on. Like I don't know, maybe your priorities come clearer and you kind of just able to let the other things go. This, of course, can also be a very painful time for some people. So I really want to call that out, especially if you suffer with endometriosis, adenomyosis. But even without that, you probably feel tired, right? As I mentioned, we are our least buffered in this part of our cycle. So you naturally have less energy, less in the tank. And so this really is a time for rest. It's a time for protecting your energy. But when we're not caring for our cycle, we often dismiss this experience or just push through. And so many of us kind of burn ourselves out, even in that first few days of our period, because we just keep going. That old saying of I can do anything and I can do it whilst I'm bleeding. And it's not about that you can't do anything. It's just, consciously choosing what you're doing, I guess, is really important. Because when we're just pushing through, when we're bypassing our body's need for rest, that's really not going to support your overall well-being, your physical, emotional, mental well-being, and your energy long-term. So if you are someone who is currently struggling with burnout or just finds they burn out really easily, low energy, terrible PMS, painful bleeds, I really encourage you to look at how you're caring for yourself during your bleed. I mean, I encourage everyone to think about that. But if those kind of particular parts are calling out to you, even another reason to kind of double down on that. Are you allowing yourself to rest when you get your period? And what would that look like? It doesn't have to mean being idle for 3 or 4 days, but how could you slow down and care for yourself? Are you nourishing yourself? And what does that mean to you? And are you listening to what your body is actually asking for? This is a time in our cycle where we allow for an intentional pause. We let go. Our womb is literally shedding the lining of our womb. So we're letting go of maybe what is no longer serving us. Yet so many of us just push past that pause and that letting go and kind of miss that that connection with our body and two, maybe what our body is trying to communicate with us or our inner psyche is. So really about allowing for a pause. Then we move into our pre-ovulation, what I call your inner spring. Some people might call phase 2. Estrogen is the main hormone in this phase. This is your get up and go hormone. It's the one that kind of gets you back out into the world. I always say to the people, this is the part of your cycle where you suddenly feel lighter again, freer. The world feels lighter again. You might notice saying things like, I actually do like my job again, this feeling I do actually like my job, or I do actually love my partner, or oh gosh, I do actually really love my life. This just kind of comes back into our world. You can feel more carefree, playful, that real playful energy comes back into our life, optimistic, hopeful for what's ahead, and it's just really lovely. It's also more of an outward connection. Like I said, we've got this hormone getting us out in the world. It's almost like you're rediscovering the world. However, again, if we're not caring for ourselves and we're not understanding this about our cycle, this part of our cycle can feel very overwhelming. If we've not rested on our bleed, if we kind of just keep going, keep doing, keep pushing, we can feel quite overwhelmed. And for some people, it can be quite anxiety-provoking. If you are someone who struggles with overwhelm or anxiety, again, I'd really encourage you to start charting that against your cycle. So not just when you've got when you feel anxious, but charting your cycle and noticing when that comes up, because there sometimes is a pattern to it, and sometimes that pattern is linked to your inner spring. So really noticing what that experience is. If you're not noticing any of those feelings of playful, creativity, hope, just carefree, sometimes that is feedback from the body that, something needs looking at. So why we want to kind of come back in line and working with our cycle. And so then we move into ovulation, our inner summer, the main event of the cycle. So many people think it's like our period is the main event, but at ovulation, an egg is being released. Like, it's pretty awesome. This is when you are your most buffered. So this is when you have the highest level of hormones in your system, or these specific hormones in your system. And together they create a real sense of resilience, energy, high capacity. It's a really feel-good combination. So we kind of anchored that back against your period. You're in a winter where you are your least buffered. We come to in a summer, we are our most buffered. And this phase is all about connection and pleasure. This is where you might notice feeling confident, sexy, assertive, nurturing, like superwoman. Like, I have got this. Like, I can do all of these things and I still have energy. And for me, this is the part of my cycle where like all of my senses want to be indulged. Taste, touch, sound, sight, smells, all of it. I want all of it. And so, my question to you is like, do you notice this? And do you allow yourself to really enjoy it, like to really revel in it? Because I find so many women either dismiss it, almost like they're ashamed of it. Like, who am I to feel this good about myself? And just feel this good and like have this vitality. So it's like they're not allowed to feel that way. And also so many people, menstruators, they're just too busy to even notice it. They're just so stuck in doing and go, 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 which is what the world glorifies. We miss out on the beauty of this phase of our cycle, and are either too burnt out or just too busy to take it in. I think so many of us are just have been so detached from our body and our experience that we miss out on this incredibly high energy sensual time. So if you are burnt out, if you're suffering burnout, then I would say maybe you're not noticing this. If you're always stuck in doing mode, you might not even feel the benefits of all of these hormones, coming together. This is where the menstrual cycle becomes a messenger, because if you're not feeling this phase at all, that is often feedback from your body that something internally or externally in your life might need attention. So that doesn't make you wrong. If you're not feeling this, I don't want you to be like, oh God, there's something wrong with me. But it's just, it's like a window. It's an indication. It invites in curiosity. And like I mentioned, so many people are just so either busy or burnt out that they're not reaping the benefits of each phase, like the inner summer. And so then we move into our inner autumn, the post-ovulation phase, kind of pre-menstruum, what some people call phase 4. This is the phase that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people have a lot of beef with this phase of the cycle. PMS symptoms show up here. This is where PMDD symptoms really show up. And it's the time of a cycle where people describe not feeling like themselves, like they lose themselves, and it can be very, very dark. Next week's episode is actually going to be dedicated to this phase. So if you really struggle with this phase, or your partner does, that episode is for you. I'd recommend everyone tune into it, but definitely for you. But today, obviously I want to talk about like what is available to you. And when you start living cyclically and really care for yourself in this phase and the other phases, this can become one of the most powerful parts of your cycle, and it can really become the friend that you didn't know you needed. Like, that's how I would describe this part of my cycle. It's a really good, honest, caring, loving friend. Now, I used to really suffer with premenstrual rage, so I don't want you to feel like I'm saying that like I can't empathize with your experience. I suffered with severe premenstrural rage. I'd been diagnosed with PMDD in my 20s. I was offered cyclical antidepressants. So I really understand how like horrific it can be and how disruptive to your life it can be. And I want you to know that something different is available to you, and it might not happen overnight, but working with your cycle and learning about the phases and learning how to care for yourself in this way can really open a different experience for you. So progesterone is the main hormone here in this phase of your cycle. It's a slowing down hormone. It is a soothing hormone. It's bringing you inwards. You will start to notice your energy wane here, like starting to slow down, and that's completely normal. So it's not I have nothing left in the tank, but that kind of 10 to 7 days before the period, it's I can feel my body slowing down compared to last week. I just don't feel like I have the capacity. I can't do it all. I can still do stuff, but I can't just do everything like I just seemed to last week. So you naturally start to slow down. You naturally start to turn inward. This phase is like a returning home to yourself, a regrounding. It's like reconnecting with yourself, and that can be really beautiful. I think I've mentioned in other episodes, though, this kind of can add to the complexity of it, which I'll speak about next week. But, being in our bodies, being connected to ourselves, hasn't often been a very nice place to be. And so then when we are then confronted with a phase that's trying to bring us into our bodies, bring us deeper into connection to ourselves, that can feel really, really tough. So I really see you in that, if that is you. And I think, that experience has really been stolen from us, because we've never been taught, one, about our cycles, and how to work with our cycles. And this phase of our cycle gets such a bad reputation because actually it's the phase of our cycle where we can become more discerning, right? The rose-tinted glasses of spring and summer have gone, and you start to see things more clearly. Your bullshit-o-meter is high. You're kind of clear about what's working well, what's not. And instead we've been fed like bullshit, like, like she's just such a bitch, or like hysterical, or like such negative associations with this phase of our cycle. So we've not really been able to get to know it. It's not something to be ashamed of, right? Like this discernment, this bullshit-o-meter, this like seeing things more clearly, this coming into connection with yourself is a gift. But if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're always stuck in doing mode, if you have high levels of stress in your life, if you are constantly burnt out, this phase will absolutely tell you about it. And yeah, it's also where the inner critic can get very loud. Like this is the home of the inner critic. We'll again talk about that next week. But if you are not caring for yourself, your inner critic will almost take control of this phase of your cycle. And that can be incredibly difficult. So can you see, reflecting on listening, how each phase really is distinct in energy? This kind of slowing down, restful, intentional pause, kind of clarity in our inner winter and our bleed. This hopeful, optimistic kind of re-entry into the world, this rising energy of our inner spring. Then in our inner summer, our ovulation phase, this high capacity, high connection, this pleasure, resiliency, capacity, and then moving into our inner autumn where it's again slowing down, coming back inwards, not so available to the world, and kind of putting ourselves out there, but bringing us back inwards. Each have a distinct emotional and like a distinct energy, a distinct emotional tone, and distinct needs. And it just comes back to that point that you're not meant to feel the same every day. Your partner's not meant to feel the same every day. And when we don't understand this, we read ourselves, or often read ourselves, as wrong, right? We read our moods as wrong. We read our energy as wrong. And that just creates a bucket of shame, which is just horrible, right? It's a horrible, horrific experience. But when you start to understand your cycle, you find compassion. You find love, and you find a connection with yourself. Like you realize, there's nothing wrong with me at all. I am just cyclical, and I am just as I am meant to be. And so cycle awareness and everything I'm talking about teaches you, is an invitation to get to know that, within yourself. The relationship you have with yourself is the most important one you'll ever have. It's why I do this work. It's the work I do in my one-to-one. Like your relationship with yourself shapes everything you are the best thing in your life. Like, I always say that to people, like, you are the best thing in your life. And learning about your cycle becomes a window to that relationship. And it's why I care so deeply about this work, like why I'm so passionate about it. And then why I'm passionate about what it can bring into queer relationships as well, relationships where two people have menstrual cycles, because it just really deepens our connection with ourselves. And then that is going to create a deeper connection with our partner. So this week, I really invite you to just notice what is around for you, and start doing a cycle check-in every day. If you've not already started, get a diary or start recording in the notes app on your phone, get a calendar and start writing down each day the date and what cycle day you're on. So for example, today I'm cycle day 6. It is a crossover day for me, so I'm kind of moving from my inner spring into from my inner winter, I should say, into my inner spring. I can feel my energy coming back, like my brain wants to go. Kind of like, right, the list is there, let's get going. And my body is sort of saying, no, not quite yet. Like, we just kind of need to still go a little bit slower, babe. If I had to pick like one or two words for today, I would say tender and gentle. Or maybe I'd just write warming up, like just warming up. And if I would just go back to the story that I mentioned to you about like the podcast and about how when I released it in my inner summer, it was like, woohoo, I've got this. I feel so like ready to be seen and put this thing out in the world. And then into my inner autumn, where it was like that quiet questioning and self-doubt and not really feeling like I could hold it. Where I am now, I think I really feel the inner winter energy of like trusting, like where I've been on my period of just like trusting where I am right now. Like all the noise has just fallen away. And then with that like emerging, hopeful, optimistic inner spring energy that's coming is just I think just that, like I have this like hopeful, optimistic, I don't know where it's all going, but I feel really good about it. And, that kind of wouldn't be accessible to me. Well, it's accessible to me, but I know it because of the relationship I have with my cycle. And, all the experiences that I've explained, that I've experienced, with launching this podcast across my cycle are all real and valid and important and useful. And that is the power that comes with learning about your cycle and working with your cycle. So yeah, I really invite you to try the same. If you could pick one or two words about how you feel today, what would they be? I have the free mini series, as I've mentioned before, that you can sign up for. It's just 3 short videos where I explain like exactly how to track and chart your cycle. So like, what is cycle day 1? When is cycle day 1, Lizzie? And that is the first day of your full bleed. But that goes, the clips go into it. It's great as well if you like something visual, because it's videos of me talking and I show some diagrams, and so it would just teach you how it teaches you very simply how to do a daily check-in so that you can start getting to know your rhythm, because after about 2 to 3 months you'll start to be able to notice patterns. It's also really lovely to watch with your partner if they're wanting to learn alongside you, so I definitely recommend checking that out. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we're going to talk all about PMS, as I've mentioned, and something I call the void, and how you can really care for yourself in this phase, because it just it doesn't need to be disrupting and taking over your life, and it isn't something that you just either have to push through or put up with. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that episode to you. And just have a wonderful week. I really look forward to connecting with you in the next episode. And thank you for